All right, so see what we got here.
Eddie just sent us a message.
Okay, we have. All right, we're waiting on.
Linda, did you see Eddie's message? Yeah.
No, I'm currently getting the Facebook thing going.
Do you know what I can do? Wait a minute.
Can you send him a new link?
Yeah, I'm going to put the, yeah, I'll send him a link.
But he needs a panelist link. Can you send him a panelist link?
Yeah, I can forward that to him.
I can always fix him when he comes in.
Yeah, okay. I just send him the link and I will let him know that.
Yeah, I'm almost done with the Facebook thing.
Yeah, I just sent Eddie the link.
All right, well, as soon as Eddie joins us, we'll get started. We have Melissa Stratt. Everybody's here. Boom, 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 boom. Yeah, okay.
Can't spell. Yeah, the mayor didn't come in yet.
I did send him the link.
Where did you send the link to?
His email, I'm going to, let's see how I can do this.
Yeah, send it to Frank. Frank is saying this message is from Frank in the chat box. It's not from the mayor.
Well, the mayor was in as Eddie, so
I did provide it to Frank.
Okay, okay, good. Thank you.
Okay, let me see here.
I just sent him another link.
oh, so that wasn't the mayor, that was Frank. Okay. That
Oh,
was,
so I said into the wrong person. Didn't know that.
yeah.
Yeah, that was Frank. It's in the chat box.
Under mayor. Oh,
Yeah,
it says this is
from Eddie
Frank.
to all
Okay.
panelists. It looks
Okay,
like
All
a
right,
long.
because I thought the mayor told me he wouldn't be available this evening. So,
Well, that's what happens when you have dual identity here.
so we're just waiting on Frank. We'll give Frank another minute or two. I'm sure he's going to figure out how to get in. If he's not on board, we'll get started. All right, boom, 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 boom. All right, we have a lot of subjects to cover. I do know we need Frank for number 4. So let's get started with number 1. And these discussions are brief this evening. They're not going to be very in-depth discussions. I added a couple on here just to get us kind of quickly appraised as to where we might be on some of these issues. Some of the answers are still out there lingering. So let's get started with the traffic study. I don't know if that was the intent there to say traffic study. I know there was a traffic study done at 18th and Perk. I don't know how many years ago. At that time, PennDOT, who owns the road, determined that a traffic light wasn't feasible. Sometimes doesn't make sense to us. If it's something we want the administration to pursue, I guess, down the road with them, that's something we need to clarify. Marcia, I think you added that on.
Yeah, and can I just make a clarifying statement? Is that the reaction was a traffic study, and I do know indeed there are many areas throughout the city that have some safety issues where that also might be needed. Knowing the process for the traffic studies and such, I do believe we still need to work on some quicker alternatives to looking at the safety issue at that intersection, considering that there is a park on the other side that the city has just spent a lot of money doing rehabilitation, put in a lot of great features for the young people. They want to come across and play there. They go across to the Olivets. So we need to really look at that and look at what the alternatives are so that they're safe crossing across that intersection.
We do have a couple RATS representatives with us, or at least one RAT. Might be something they can take to the coordinating committee.
Yeah, I'll be happy to do that, Jeff. I serve on the coordinating committee, but Charlie serves on the
Technical.
Tim on the
Stan does.
Oh, Stan, excuse me. I'm sorry, Stan. You're on the technical committee.
With Charlie and Tim.
Correct.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So
Let
we
me
can all
ask you-
advocate.
Jeff, if I could ask.
But
a
Marcia,
question.
then Johanny.
Yeah, I do believe we need to look at all alternatives. So where the traffic study and the traffic light may be something under RATS, there may be other committees that are parts of the administration that this may come under, looking at the overall safety issue.
Yeah, I think as it relates to the road, since it's a state road, only they can make modifications to it. But there might be other things I don't know. That's a good question.
Right.
Go to Johanny.
I just wanted to add, if I may, for a reminder for us not to also forget about the Second and Buttonwood intersection, where we had a constituent who had a petition with community members and identified that intersection as a hazard. And I know that that requires some type of study, but because of COVID and school being out of session, they couldn't necessarily study the area, because it's an area that is frequented by a lot of students during the school year. They're crossing the street and it's a potential hazard. There's been accidents already that have taken place in that intersection. So I'd just like us to be mindful of that and make sure that we follow up on that as well, if possible.
Noted, Johnny.
Thank you.
Okay, Lucy.
I was really pleased to see traffic study as an agenda item because in addition to Johanny's and Marcia's comments, I have been aware in District 1 of 2 different areas specifically that, community members have talked about. Last week, there was actually an accident and traffic studies come up. I believe this is an opportunity for educating not only us as representatives to our constituents, but also to the constituents directly. In terms of what Marcia is saying, how do we take the steps and what is the process? Identifying areas of concern, community members coming together, what things can they do immediately? What things do they need to present to their council members to take directly to department heads and the administration for attention? You know, it's not just, is there a traffic study needed? Is this a federally owned street? You know, how do we do that? But it's kind of a 101 in terms of, we have high levels of concerns. How do we communicate this? How do we figure out what steps we have as empowered individuals, whether you're a community member, a city councilor, and beyond? And then making sure that, as Johanny said, these things are not falling, you know, through the cracks, because that happens all too easily, or the communication is not distributed to a point where maybe one person on the administration may hear about it, but two others in other departments may not. And it takes all three of them together to work towards it simultaneously for accomplishment. So I would ask, you know, from the administration possibly to lead or guide us when it's, you know, convenient for them, especially with the summer coming. You know, how can we do a really good public education and outreach to our community members to say, hey, if this is something that's of concern, these are things you can immediately do yourselves. These are things you bring to your counselor. These are petitions that you can file, etc. I would really appreciate being educated on something like that for our community.
Donna?
I think all those things make a lot of sense. Certainly there are policies that are established for different things. I think we can all, and I think we all should submit to the administration, just as a point of reference within the next couple weeks, those intersections of our districts that have been most pronounced to us and most requested of us, that either lights or stop signs or things like that occur. I have, you know, what seems to be a small intersection or a smaller one at Front and Amity, yet there's been numerous accidents there. Traffic studies don't even warrant a stop sign, but what can we do to slow traffic, to calm traffic at an intersection like that? I also wanted to mention that there's been outreach to me and to our state senator, Judy Schwenk, and maybe to some of you on council regarding pedestrian crossings at the Penn Street Bridge. That is, everyone knows the bridge is beautiful, beautiful. But if you're walking from West Reading to the city, or vice versa, or coming off the second and Penn intersections are pretty well done. But the other intersections where the ramps are located are really difficult and really scary for pedestrians. I know that most of those are the western end of the bridge over in West Reading, but I think that's something we should be cognizant of. And Stan, maybe you, Charlie, and me, and Tim can reach out to West Reading and also to PennDOT regarding a better definition at those, or defining signs and street painting at those intersections. So if we can all, with the administration's okay, Abe, I'm looking at you for this one, submit our problem or our concerning intersections, say within the next 2 weeks, and then go from there as the administration looks at them, evaluates them. Maybe there can be a report to us in a couple of weeks or 3 weeks at the committee of the whole on those specific ones, what the requisite is for traffic studies, what traffic studies have shown. And if it's impossible to get those stop signs, street lights, whatever, what other calming, traffic calming or signage can be placed there to control the speed a little bit, to make people more aware of pedestrian crossings. There has to be some alternatives that can help. So I would ask that of ourselves and of the administration.
Jeff.
Yes, Jack, go ahead.
Okay, I think each of us have problems in our districts. I think it's only appropriate that we sit down with administration and come up with the areas in our district where we're having a problem, and then invite somebody from the state to come down here and let him meet with all of us and bring these problems to his attention and see what I don't want to hear that they have to do surveys and this and that. If they want to do surveys, they'll be here for the next 5 years doing surveys and not accomplishing anything. But I think we should all get together with the administration and invite somebody from the state to come down here and listen to our problems before somebody really gets injured. Now it's starting to get bad up in my area again, up in Hampton Boulevard. We slow it down, but now with this good weather coming, we're going to have problems again. That's my suggestion, Jeff.
Yeah, and I think what we should do in the next week or so, if people have specific intersections and areas of concern, let's let Linda compile one list. We'll forward it on to the administration as one list, give them an appropriate amount of time to look at it and come back with some suggestions. We're not going to solve all these problems at one time, but I agree with, instead of us coming in from a million different angles, we can maybe put a strategic plan around some of the more critical ones and then slowly address the other ones. So is that okay, Abe, if we compiled one list? And so I think it'd be helpful that way. I think it's a good suggestion.
It certainly is, yes.
Okay, so we'll work on that and we'll get it to Abe. I'm sure he'll get Stan and Charlie involved with it and give them a few weeks to get back to us and give us an update. And again, I think we have to understand that some of these intersections have been around for a while. I can think of Fifth and Oley, which we've studied probably 3 times. It never made sense to me. There's a traffic light from Robinson all the way down to what, Spruce. And for some reason, that one intersection never qualifies. Now, it's a PennDOT road, but it's just as dangerous as every other intersection from what I can tell. But for whatever standard, it doesn't meet it. So sometimes it's a bit befuddling. But I know for the state road, Stan and Charlie can work, through RATS to see if there's anything they can do. And then for the city roads, we can see what improvements we can make. I think that's a good suggestion. And at the end of the day, people, while we're talking about this, people need to slow down. When they drive in our city, there are too many kids and too many people and a lot of busy streets, and for people to be speeding and doing what some of these people are doing. We don't need to talk about the dirt bikes again, but I just saw 3 of them today. People need to follow the laws and look out for each other. And there are certainly instances, it wouldn't matter what we have on the street, the way some of these people are driving. That doesn't mean we don't do what we need to do, but it's certainly a big concern. So.
Jeff?
All right. Any other issues on this specific topic?
One more comment, Jeff.
Yes, Jack.
We have more cars, more vehicles on the streets now than we ever had. We need to consider that. Thank you.
Yep. All right. Our next topic is just a brief update on the Youth Commission. I got to read the articles. I just added this on here just so Lucine or somebody could give us an update. Seems like they're off to an exciting start. So A, how is that going? B, anything we need to help with at this point? I'm sure they're still formulating. So Lucine, did you want to?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Jeff. I appreciate it being placed on the agenda. I think sometimes we get through and then forget to bring the updates to everybody. And this is one we certainly should be talking about a lot. The inaugural meeting of the Youth Commission occurred. It was fantastic. We had all but 2 of the individuals attend the meeting, and Judge Johnson was able to swear each individual in. So they're starting out, the right way, and they are ready to go. There was an agenda put together, and the meeting was led by John Zabala, who is the volunteer. And I see that in a regular meeting that's on the agenda to officially appoint him as counsel. I know he will do a very good job, and he and the individuals will be learning together, really kind of a civics 101 in education on our form of government, our charter, Robert's Rules of Order, and given the opportunity for us to open the doors for them. We hope that these are our future leaders, that they themselves will be interested and inspire others in the community. They will be able to share their perspective and their point of view on legislative aspects, that we review, and give that input and advice. There's the opportunity for them to request and meet with many of us, including some requests. So Chief Tornelli was a request. They're very much looking forward to meeting with the chief, and other community and thought leaders. And of course, they've been encouraged to meet and reach out directly to each counselor, district specific, so that they have us as a point of contact. And so I have a lot of excitement and, working with these individuals. I think they're all very bright and shining examples of our future for the city of Reading. I want to thank fellow counselors that made time and were able to attend the meeting. And those of you who really have been along the way. We had some special guests too. I think Representative Guzman was able to pop in and inspire the youth, which was really nice to see. And in addition, the continued support from the mayor's office by Frank was always appreciated. It really means a lot to the youth to feel that their voices are being heard and that they're going to be able to represent our city and bring some change as change agents. So we do have a second meeting scheduled. At this point, the next meeting will be May 5th. It is in the evenings, which is the most conducive to a majority of their schedules. There will be an agenda. They will slowly begin to follow the procedure and protocol of, city government, in advertising these meetings, putting an agenda together. They'll be learning and have all the resources that have been given to them, the documents that we talked about earlier to learn. And then they have the opportunity to self-select and elect a president and a secretary, and we all look forward to them going through that process. I know that Marcia and Johanny were able to attend the meeting. We missed Melissa, but look forward to having her. And I know Shelley really has been doing the lion's share of keeping this going. So if any of you would like to make a comment, anything that I left out to update everybody on the Youth Commission, please feel free. Go ahead, Donna.
I wasn't able to attend, but I did catch it on a replay. So thank you. It was great. Those of you who could attend from council, thank you for representing all of us. Just one thing, as this goes forward, if each member of the Youth Commission can be provided with the MAC policy guidelines, it's a learning experience. I know someone did discuss a certain political situation. That's not we can't have that be done, and that's been rectified for the repeats of the Youth Commission. But and it's a learning experience. No one did anything, maliciously or anything like that. But if they can all be provided, Shelley, I don't know if you will be the one to disperse it, the MAC policy, and to remind everyone that political issues, political candidacies cannot be discussed because it is broadcast and it is part of our policy to not do that. So again, learning for everybody, all's well. And it's great to see the enthusiasm and movement forward. So good stuff.
Yeah, thanks, Donna. That it is a learning process. So certainly noted. I took a note of that, and we'll make sure they get those guidelines. I think Marcia and Johanny both had comments. So
Yeah, and I had put something in the chat to reach out to fellow council members, but there was an interest in the Robert's Rules of Order, and I think it would be very great gift for us to pass on to those youth that are representing our different districts. I would be willing to facilitate ordering them. I'm looking at what might be, there's all different versions of it, what might be the best to use for this group, but then, make them available at the next meeting, or how, I guess we would want to mail them to their homes, however we want to do them. But just a thought, I really think if we put personal messages on them, encourage them, because Robert's Rule is a little overwhelming when you first look at it, just to be able to let them know this is the beginning of their journey.
All right, who else? Johanny?
Hi, thank you. So I just want to also thank Shelley, Councilwoman Lucine, Councilwoman Melissa for taking on the lead and carrying this out to fruition. I mean, I was very excited to see our young people take an oath and be sworn in. I'd like to request that we allocate time on our agenda, Committee of the Whole, and or our public meeting for the Youth Commission to have a space so that they can give us updates, so that they can present what they're discussing. I would also like to request that their meetings also be live streamed so that we can get more youth and community engagement and participation so they can see progress and be motivated and encouraged to partake in community functions and in helping contribute to improvements in our neighborhoods. And also I want to give a big shout out and a congratulations to John Sabala for a meeting well led. He did a great job. And yeah, kudos to him. I'm always impressed and I always feel proud when I see our young leaders, you know, just leading the way. Yeah, we have, like, our young people are such great assets to our city and our community. So I'm glad that we are enabling this process. So thank you to all.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Lucine, final comment? Go
Yeah,
ahead.
I just want to follow up because Johanny, they are required to report to council at large at least once a year, or whatever the schedule is. So that is a requirement. They know that, and they'll be working towards preparing, a presentation like our other boards, authorities, and commissions. So we'll work on that with them to get them ready for that. In the meantime, though, I'm sure they'll have direct things to talk to us about as individual counselors for our districts. And I encourage all of us, to the best of our ability, to be available and open to take that phone call or text message or FaceTime request or whatever it is, however they decide to communicate and reach out to us, to be as responsive as we can be to them.
All right. Thank you, Lucine, and everyone for the update. Again, a lot of these topics, we're just doing some brief updates. The Downtown Plus strategic plan, I really, many of you may have gotten an email. I just wanted Jamal, if he's available, just to give us an update on what the next steps will be for council involvement. This can be a quick 5-10 minute overview, Jamal. We don't have to get too deep. Did anybody get an email regarding being interviewed for this plan? Okay, so that information has come out. Marcia did not yet. So Jamal, if you could just give us, as it relates to council members, what we should be expect to be doing in the next couple of weeks as it relates to the plan. We'll have a deeper discussion down the road. I just added this on here as an opportunity to make sure everybody's getting pulled into the process. So can you just speak to how council is expected to participate in the process?
Certainly. Thank you very much, Council President. If I can share with you the mural here, this is what you will be seeing. This is probably what Standig will show you when you start looking at your inputs in there. This mural is live, and basically it expands every time. So they will walk you through the city, and they will walk you through the limits of the study itself, from Buttonwood all the way to Canal Street, and then from Riverfront all the way to the park. And as you can see through our bi-weekly meetings, the bi-weekly meetings, we have identified several areas that some of them are actually good areas for expansions, some other areas that would require additional attentions, as well as basically where we can go from here. So we've identified College Town coming into the area, the master plan for RAC. How are we going to handle the riverfront with the industrial manufacturing facilities that they exist in the side in there? How can we benefit from Canal Street and the area in there? And these are some of the discussions that you will all be going through with them, and they will actually be very welcoming to any input and all input that you have from this point onwards in there. Obviously, once we get the stakeholder input all together, and the stakeholders, we've identified this to the city councils as well as business attractions, development authorities, as well as basically developers coming in. So the list grows and bigger in there, and it includes residential developments as well as commercials. We are going to focus at a certain point in time on aspects like where we go from here, how's the market study is going to be implemented, and how we'll be able to identify opportunities for us to grow into that. And part of the program itself, and I would like to take this opportunity to make it clear that there will be an online survey under the Social Pinpoint program. That is a program that we will basically the city as well as Stantec work together on developing the questionnaires based on the feedback we will receive from the stakeholders to allow each and every residence and business owners within the city of Reading to actually participate and offer us their opinion. I am not quite certain whether this program will be available in Spanish and English, but I know that we are working on that at this point in time, as well as what will happen that we will have a side meetings and actually hold meetings with the communities, and you will see this in the schedule that we have over here. So some of these points in there are actually meetings that we are going to include the public as well as city councils for that. That's a very quick summary of where we are. And we are going to move on and continue to move with that. I'm delighted to share with you that Desmond Design Management is also the selected contractor for the comprehensive parking studies, and we have now engaged him as well as Stantec to start talking about mobilities and about the use of the parking garages, because you will notice from the picture here that we have a large number of parking spaces that mainly focus in the downtown area, where some of the other areas we don't have as many parking spaces. So all of these will be taken into considerations, including with the fact that how is the train station is going to, the passenger train, when it materializes, how is that going to impact, and how we will be able to develop the area around 7th Street.
All right,
That's-
Jamal, that's good. I'm sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you, but so that's good. That gives council kind of a preview of what they're going to be showing you and reviewing with you. And each member, if you didn't receive an email to be interviewed on this, please let Jamal know via email. Jamal, we don't need to discuss it now, but what I'd like to do after every council member has gone through the interview process is get council kind of a little more deeper involved than everybody else, obviously, that's being interviewed.
Sure.
We're going to have to figure out how we have some update meetings for the body as well, probably on a monthly basis from this point, a little more in depth than what we've allowed for tonight. I know it's hard to talk about this thing without going into details, but I want everyone to be interviewed first, and then we all group and we get kind of a monthly update from, if not, maybe every 3 weeks from Stantec and yourself, and where it's a give and take kind of discussion. So we have a little more input than just an interview, or at least a little bit more understanding as well. It's just the same, council. I've had one meeting so far with the mayor and the managing director and Jamal and Stantec. We're hoping to have more, just kind of as a kind of an executive overview. And the next time, hopefully we'll have some information to report from that discussion. We didn't have a ton in this first meeting, but the goal is to make sure everybody gets interviewed in this process, understand, and that way you understand what they're actually doing. And then council as a body also getting updates and having input on an ongoing basis. So Jamal, just one question. Those council interviews have been scheduled through when? April? By the end of April, will they be done? It depends on when everyone schedules.
Actually, it is within everyone's schedule. I sent an invitation to all city council, and we set a schedule, but the schedule is not set in concrete. If you feel that you would like to have another day, please suggest that day to us, and we'll be more than happy to. In addition, that if Zoom or Team is not applicable in some case, and you would feel more comfortable to have a telephone call, then that will be also accommodated too. The only disadvantage to that is that you will not be able to see the mural that they're working on. This is the mural that we have right now, and it continues to grow. So they will probably.
All right, so what I would like to do, and I'll talk to Abe and the mayor about, but because it'll be an update for not just the body, but for other members of the administration as well. Maybe a month from now, be able to schedule during one of our committee of the whole meetings, a good hour meeting with them, maybe a little longer. And maybe by then, most of the council members will have had the opportunity to go through the interview process. So Linda, will you make note of that? And we'll check with Jamal at the beginning of May, see if we can get that scheduled. Council, that's what I had on the agenda tonight. It was just an opportunity to make sure we all touch base regarding where we are in this process. As it relates to the process, are there any questions or comments, thoughts, concerns? I just want to make sure. Johanny?
Just curious, will this presentation that we're viewing, will that be shared with us?
Yes, to the best of my understanding, that they will have the same mural with you, and they will walk you through any area you would like to. So for instance, Councilwoman, if you would like to focus on your area in there, they will be able to hone in and take notes. Specific. All of these yellow, blue stickies in there are actually stickies that they develop at that time, and they will insert them as they go.
Can you take your screen down? Okay, anybody else have questions? Because I can't see everyone's hands. Anybody else? Just on the process itself. Lucy?
Hi, Jamal. Thank you. What is the most current timeline that you could share with us for the process?
The current time in terms of like finalizing the process of the study itself, is that what you, is that a question? Well, as I mentioned earlier, it's the study itself started at the latter part of January, beginning of February altogether, and there we are moving at a very good clip at this point in time. Subject to the stakeholders and the meetings that we have, we'll probably finish sometime at the end of July, beginning of August, and that's the schedule that is set right now. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, good. Thank you. So I just want to make sure everyone was clear. You should have all gotten an email to schedule for an interview by Stantec. I'm hoping that by the first week of May, everybody's had a chance to do that. And within the first 10 days of May, we have a broad-based overview with them. I want to keep, I know the administration does as well, wants to keep council's pulse on this thing. It is a lot of moving parts. We do have one of the best consultants there is. So hopefully at the end of this process, we'll end up at a very good place. It's an important project for the city. Go ahead, Donna.
And just, reiterating what you're saying, Jeff, I know I got a little frustrated last week, and I think many of us have gotten frustrated over the years, but it's just so critical that after we go through this, that we see realistic things coming out of it and action coming out of this, that it is not a Sasaki plan, that is not a Zucchelli Hunter plan, that it's none of the ones that we've gone through that are sitting on our shelves. It's just, if there's any kind of possible guarantee we can get that there will be movement after this, that it won't be something that's just a point of discussion, lots of interviews, and lack of action. I'm very concerned about that, because now we're at the optimum time with the council and administration. It pretty much is on an even keel and shared visions, and the economics of the times. We're looking at a couple good economic years coming up post-COVID. The administration we have in the White House that understands urban issues, and hopefully some degree of cooperation amongst our state delegation, federal delegation. Now's the time. So we have to look at this, and we have to look at the outcomes of this translating into action, and relatively soon, within the next year or so.
So, and I hope everyone expresses that to the consultant. I will just tell you that the mayor has made that a key point, that we want this plan to be front loaded, meaning a lot of activity early on so it carries momentum. And it's going to require funding and other things, but we'll have more opportunity as we do these group talks. And I want to avoid getting too deeply into the plan tonight, because I just want to make sure we understood the process. But go ahead, Marcia, and then Lucy.
And I think, to Donna's point, we may need to look at what we can do legislatively to be able to adopt the plan and have some requirements that become a legal standing, whatever that might be. So it just doesn't sit there. Not that we know the administration wants to move forward, but we need to reinforce that too. So I want us to think about that, so it doesn't become another plan that's sitting back there and forgotten about. That it is actually, and it is a requirement for funding of the city to move forward with this plan. And we have control over that as council. So let's just think about how we might want to handle that piece moving forward.
Well, that's exactly right. And that's why I want to make sure council's fully on board with the understanding of the process and where it's going. And I know the mayor feels the same way. Lucine, did you have a comment?
Yeah, really on that same thread of thought, I want to, we're talking about being able to enforce and follow this plan of shared vision once it's presented to us. But it needs to be adopted by all of us. And I'm really glad that we're having these conversations now, because as we've experienced in the most recent past, all of council, needs to be vetted through the process and updated. So Jeff, are you going to be the lead liaison for council to be working with the administration and thus subsequently making sure that, we're kind of updated and those updates are being given to us every 3 weeks like you recommended? Because we've seen that it's very difficult through the process for every single person to receive and be processed through every conversation. And that's really critical because the work will get done. But if each person is not part of, that process and led by one representative, and if it's not communicated, then all that work could go to the wayside. And then we could see things not being executed. So Jeff, are you going to be that person?
Well, I am, and myself and the mayor, because as this thing gets closer, as it relates to council, I'll make sure that, because we have to be. When we get through May and June, by the time we get into July, this is going to be like a pile of clay really starting to take shape. And we're probably all going to have to be pretty intimately involved at that point, because we can't be putting forward legislation and people are clueless about it. So I want to make sure everyone's got a hand on it. We understand it. The mayor's clear on it. He's got a hand right in the middle of this. We all need to be on the same page by the time we get to the end of this process. This isn't something that could come to city council, July 31st and say, hey, here you go. And I think Abe understands that. The mayor understands that. And I'm just trying, that's the only reason it's on the agenda tonight, because I know the invitations went out and we haven't really had a whole lot of time to talk about this. They've been busy getting kind of up and running. And they're kind of in the beginning, the end of their beginning phase. This middle phase is going to probably be a good month or two, but the end phase is where I think the final touches are going to come into play. And we all need to understand what goes into that and what the expectations are coming out of it, so that when we get to the end product, we're all understanding how we got there and why we're there, and we can agree on it. So yeah, I mean, Lucine, you make a good point. It's very important that everybody stays apprised on this. I could shoot my mouth and say, oh yeah, we'll do this and that, but the body has to agree with that. So, I want to make sure that, the body's brought forward with this as well. And the mayor understands that, Abe understands that, and I understand that very clearly. So this isn't something that's going to happen without the rest of city council, by no means. So it's very important. And again, those last 2 months, it might be every 2 weeks that we're on a call, really putting final touches on this thing, because to do a really effective plan, it's got to be, and the mayor's agreed with this, it's got to be very deliberate. It can't be just a bunch of hot air on a piece of paper saying this is what we consider doing. It's got to be deliberate steps. We've got to talk about the funding, where it's going to come from, how we're going to get it, and put a deliberate plan to action so that we're actually completing things, and using Gantt charts along the way to measure the steps, measure the progress. Otherwise, it's just a dead duck, right? We've all seen them. I think this administration is focused downtown. The mayor extended this into the plus areas because he realized how important that was too, for some of these feeder corridors. So there's going to be some concerted efforts there. I know Jamal's very familiar with commerce and how to, get the most out of those concepts. And this, I think we're going to find that this consultant will bring us a lot of great ideas too, that things we may never have thought of, because they see it all over. So I just want to make sure, Lucine, to your point, that everybody's involved, and I want everybody to feel involved. I want to make sure you get your interviews scheduled, and then we have ongoing discussions. Especially for city council, you're more than just a stakeholder, you're a primary stakeholder. So, everybody on the body with the mayor needs to have their finger on this and be a big part of it, So.
Jeff,
Yeah, sir.
do we contact Jamal personally for an interview?
Yeah, if you
Or
didn't
do
get
we
an
go
email, I
through-
want you to reach out to Jamal. Linda, if you'll email Strat's phone number to Jamal, he can give him a call one day this week and get something scheduled. Is that okay, Jamal?
Absolutely, yes, by all means, I'd be more than
Yeah.
happy.
So Strat, Jamal's going to give you a call, see when he can get something scheduled, okay?
Very good,
Hey.
will do.
No
Thank you.
problem. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Everybody kind of understand where we are in the process? I look forward to a lot more discussions on this plan in the coming weeks and months, because it's going to be a big part of what we do. All right. State fireworks. Where's Frank? I added that on. I got myself so worked up last week that I just, any updates on the state legislation, Frank? I hate to put that on you, but I'm so frustrated. I'm just so worried about fireworks this year in the city. There was a time last year where the mayor and I were going to consider going up to Harrisburg, and then COVID hit, and I don't know, and my house burned down. All kinds of things happened. But I hope the state legislator does something soon, because if they don't, it's not going to matter much this year. But your thoughts, Frank, on what they're
Sure.
doing and anything we can do as a body or an administration to move it along.
Well, absolutely. I made some calls to Harrisburg today. So here's the quick update, just to bring everybody on the same page. Referring to the State Fireworks Act that was passed in 2017. So in 2017, the legislature passed this new law that allows the residents to buy consumer fireworks. That's what changed the whole game in 2017. Now, there's been a lot of concerns, and constituents have been reaching out to Harrisburg. So particularly the urban districts of the Commonwealth have put together a proposed legislation. It's House Bill 988. And this is sponsored by Representative Peter Schweier from Allentown. And the original co-sponsors are Representative Razi, and Representative Guzman has just signed on as co-sponsor. So basically, this amendment to Act 43 of 2017, the purpose of this amendment is to rescind everything that was passed in 2017, basically going back to where we were before, where you could only have novelty fireworks, and you can do, you still have the fireworks shows and the community gatherings and stuff. So the purpose of House Bill 988 is to repeal what was passed in 2017. Now, this bill was introduced January 13th and is currently sitting in the Agricultural and Rural Affairs Committee. And I asked my person, I said, why there? They said, that's where the fireworks legislation is. It's under the Agricultural and Rural Affairs. So it's currently in committee. It hasn't moved from committee. To see the state legislative process has a lot of layers to it. In order for legislation to come to the floor, the committee has to move it out. And there's some exceptions of leadership, like the Speaker of the House has some ability at times to put stuff at the House floor. But right now, there's no vote scheduled for it in committee. And basically, the co-signers are mostly there from Allentown, Bethlehem, Reading. What I was told today is, while there's a lot of support from legislators to represent urban areas or even municipalities have high concentration of individuals, even townships, are finding opposition from the rural districts, because the rural districts aren't supportive of repealing this for various reasons. The one thing is, when this legislation was passed in 2017, it did create another revenue source for the Commonwealth. So there's a thought process from others that the state would lose that revenue source. I haven't been able to find out how much revenue that is. I wasn't able to do that in time for the meeting, so I don't know if it's substantial or not. But that's pretty much the brief synopsis of where we're at. So the question you asked, Council President, is what can the city do? What can council body do? What I can do is I can get a list of all the committee members of the Agricultural Committee, because right now that's where it's at. We need enough majority votes to get out of the committee, particularly leadership. So I'd be glad to provide that, the names of legislators. And I think the first step is to be able to send a letter of support from both the administration and council of Act 43. I'm keeping an eye on it, see if there's going to be a public hearing, if there's any public hearings. But right now, nothing's scheduled for this legislation. It's kind of dormant at the moment.
Before I open it up, just real quick, Frank, my understanding is about $6 million. I could be wrong, but
okay.
Effective immediately, I'm not buying any more milk, just so you know. I'm done with it. But no, seriously, if we can testify to any committee, I would love to do that. I mean, this is about, everything's always broken up by urban and suburban, whatever, for some reason in the state legislature. And I've had this discussion with some of them many times, the senators. It's costing them more than they realize. They think just because it's isolated to a city, or densely populated areas, that they're not paying a price. They are. I mean, this is causing a lot of stress on a lot of people, and who knows the downstream effects of just the children who are crying in their homes because they can't take the noise any longer. You know, these people who are voting on this can't possibly have a clear picture of how this is truly impacting some of these cities. Reading last July was, it was unbearable. I mean, I had to meet my daughter, and my grandchildren were both screaming their heads off in the car as they were driving through the city. I'm sure there were elderly people. I mean, it was like a war zone. This is not like some gray area where the state legislature should be pondering, is $6 million worth it or not? This is a no-brainer. And I support Manny and Mark's effort. If there's any way we can testify, I certainly agree sending a letter, but I'd like to verbalize directly in front of these people how stupid this law is. Just the fact that it's mixed in with the agricultural committee tells you everything you need to know. I'm not going to ban milk, but I'm certainly want to make sure we put a voice behind this, and I'm willing, and I'm sure the mayor's willing to testify our thoughts. I'm going to go to Marcia and then Donna.
Okay, and I appreciate working through the state legislative process. And I think I know the answer to this, but I think it's important to put it out publicly. Does the state law include preemption clauses that preclude us from doing something at the local level? And I just think that that's part of what we should say, is that if we can't get the change for them to go back to it, that at least you could eliminate the preemption. By eliminating the preemption, then we could do local legislation.
It's a good question. It's probably almost, I hate to refer to legal, but you're right. It's a good question because state statute most times would trump, but I'll let Fred explain.
Yeah, I feel like we might have looked into this before, but
Right.
When it came up maybe 2 or 3 years ago when the current bill was introduced, because I think we were considering this, but I'll be glad to take another look. It's been a while since I've looked at what's on the books, but I'm not 100% sure either way.
Okay, thank you.
Donna and then Lucy.
Yeah, and I think to look at this realistically, when you look at the calendar where we're at now, we're mid-April now. July 4th is not that far away. Memorial Day is not that far away. I think it's unrealistic to think anything consequential will happen, because if people want to get fireworks, they probably already have them. They're already being sold. You know, what's going to happen this year is probably going to happen this year. What efforts are we as a city taking to be proactive to try to preclude this war zone situation that truly we had last year? It was, I mean, there was no question about it. What are we doing from a public safety standpoint? Is there any way we can use our noise ordinance that would then prohibit the sound of them? Any kind of public safety threatening public safety, fire threats? I mean, are there other ways that we can use the laws that are in place to fight this? Because it seems that other laws would apply to this as well.
And Donna, before they respond, I know that the chief is on and he'll tell us that they did a lot of citing last year, but that's the other issue here, Frank, is they're putting our police and firemen at a lot of unnecessary risk. I mean, they got enough to deal with it as it is. If these state legislators don't understand how much this law puts first responders at risk, they shouldn't be in the state legislature. Those are my comments.
But Jeff, we can only do what we can do with them. We have to look at what we can do internally.
No, I understand that. But you're going to hear
our city safer.
You're going to hear that they were overwhelmed, and I'll give to the chief and turn it over to them. But they did a lot.
So yeah, so the city has an ordinance that bans the use of all these fireworks that were legalized by the new law. The problem becomes you can go outside of the city and buy those fireworks. The fire department through the fire marshal's office has denied every permit for fireworks sales within the city of Reading. So we're doing all we can from the legislative side and from the permitting side to prevent this. It just becomes then an enforcement issue where it takes an inordinate amount of officers on the street to even try to keep a handle on the dangerous situations, let alone the situations that are affecting the quality of life. So to Frank's point, you know, it is strange that this resides in the agricultural section, but that's where this law has always resided. And we need it repealed at the state level because, like I said, we can legislate all we need.
I don't like that.
It's all someone has to do then is drive outside of the city limit to a fireworks stand, to fireworks, and they can use them there.
Yeah, and just to go back to the preemption issue. And it's not so much a preemption issue. I think that what's on the books, if it were enforceable, actually does almost exclude fireworks from in most of the city, because there's the way it's written, it's like 150 feet from any structure, and to find an open area in Reading that's 150 feet, that's not 150 feet from any structure, is almost impossible with and it's certainly not where a lot of these are being set off from, but to actually be able to be there in the moment and do something about it is the complicated part.
Right, because possession's legal. And so if somebody has fireworks, as long as they're not setting them off, you can't do anything. You actually have to catch the person actually setting off the fireworks to hold somebody accountable. And the only thing we can really do is confiscate them. But that gives us very little tools.
Well, and that's the problem
Jeff.
with state law. And before you go, Strat, it's Lucine's turn. Go ahead, Lucine, and then Strat.
So, first, I'm glad, we're recognizing that any kind of advocacy, on the state level is going to take time. So the conversation we're having right now is not going to resolve what's going to be happening, in 3 months. But I do have faith in, our legislators, and especially, in Senator Schwank, because she sits as the minority leader for the Agricultural and Rural Commissions. And she's very much proven herself as an advocate, not only in the agricultural sector here in Berks County, but also from the perspective of the city of Reading. So I think that, as much as we can reach out to her, to Razi, to Guzman, we can work towards finding, a better solution in the future and looking at how to make up what now the state has seen as an income flow. But I want to go back to the current moment of short term. What can we do? I wonder if there might be opportunity here, directly through whether it would be the police department and, community outreach for a safety campaign. Because again, this isn't going to be, enforcement. Like, the laws are there. The police and fire, they're ready. They did a tremendous job last year, but a lot of this, I think, needs to be a precursor to that coming as some kind of, public safety and awareness campaign that could come maybe from the police department, from the fire department, generating funds and awareness. Each of us could be out there in our own safe ways, advocating and educating as to the fact that you should not be buying these, specific fireworks. This is against the law. These are the repercussions. This is dangerous, and this is why. That might be one actual practical approach that we can take to try to ramify. What we saw last year was just horrendous. So we need to be thinking not only short term, but also long term. I don't know if either of the chiefs could speak to whether, there is an opportunity and funding resources for some kind of educational outreach campaign from their departments.
Yeah, and go ahead, Chief Stout, if you wanted to come in.
Yeah, I think we spoke of this at the end of last year, probably reaching out and doing this. We could reach out and get in contact with Chief Tornelli, the fire marshal's office. We'll all put our heads together and come up with a plan here. I'm sure we could find funding somewhere, to push forward a safety campaign take a shot at it anyways.
Yeah. And yeah, I think that's, Chief, not to cut you off, we've got to keep going. I got Johanny, but before you go, Johanny, and I think, Lucine, I was just thinking, maybe the mayor could do a public outreach, kind of speech to people. And I agree that might help a little bit. The problem is that these people that are setting this stuff off, I don't even think they care, first of all. Second of all, this state law is telling people it is legal to buy them. And when you tell them it's legal to buy them, they think it's legal to set them off. And that's the stupidity. Sorry, I have to use that word. Of this state law. It's nothing short of stupid. And any of these legislators who are in those roles should know how they're impacting every community in this state, not just their agricultural areas or wherever they come from. They need to grow up and fix this law. They may not like to hear that, but that's the reality. And I agree with all of you. It's going to take time. It should have been repealed July 5th of last year, but they'll do things at their pace. Go ahead, Johanny.
So I appreciate Lucy's comments, and I completely agree that a safety campaign is absolutely necessary, and how we conduct it obviously matters as well, because I appreciate when we get robocalls about matters, because I think that reaches the masses. I think maybe education videos and so on, because I think part of the problem also is that people are unaware maybe that this is illegal. I don't know. I don't know. However, I also think that we should also be planning maybe like either a firework display, like a designated space for fireworks so people can come and watch in a safe environment. I don't know if that's going to happen this year, or if we're going to be designating safe spaces for people to set off these fireworks, the legal ones, of course. So I kind of wanted to, so that we can be proactive, so that we can prevent what took place last year and the year before that and so on. So just trying to figure out how do we be proactive in the meantime.
Yeah, and I agree with that, Marcia, before you go, and I agree with all these.
Jeff, don't forget Strat.
Okay, Strat's next, but I agree with all these efforts, but we've got to work on getting this, because regardless of all these efforts, as long as people are selling these fireworks in our state legally, it's going to be a disaster. And I'll tell you what's going to happen. A fireman or a policeman's going to get hurt in one of these situations, and they're going to go, geez, what were we thinking? And it's going to be too late, because honestly, the people are stressed, but these first responders are extremely stressed in this situation. It was bad before these things were legal. Now it's horrendous. Strat, you and then Marcia, we've got to get through this issue so we can move on here, guys. Go ahead, Strat.
We need to be talking to our state representatives. It isn't just our laws here. You got to remember, people travel 50 miles out of the state into other states and pick up all the fireworks they want and bring them back here. People like that, if they're apprehended, they should be cited.
All right.
But we need to talk to our legislators to come up with something, possibly to talk or meet with the other people from the other states and let them know what's going on.
Yep.
But I don't know how many of you people know that you can go to other states and get all the fireworks you want. No one bothers you.
So instead of tightening the noose, they made it wider. So it just made it easier for people to buy them. Go ahead, Marcia, and then we're going to move forward.
Yeah, and I think it's important to be able to look at it as public safety. I understand what Johanny's saying, except what was interesting last year is that we did provide a place for public safe fireworks. And what happened to it was, because there were so many fireworks occurring within the city, the actual fireworks that were held up at the overlook near the pagoda lost their impact. You didn't need to look up to see them. There were so many happening down within the city that there was no balance and there was no safety. And so you couldn't go from where you wanted to watch them to get safely to your home. And that's the most important piece, is that we're going to eventually have our city go up in flames. Okay, fireworks are deadly. And I really want to look at that educational program to be able to really do some visual kinds of things, and maybe work with the youth commission. Maybe they can be tied into this somehow to be advocates, because we need to be able to look at helping people understand, just as there are other issues that you need to prevent, this is deadly. And I think people get such a thrill out of shooting them off. I watch what happens across the street from my home when they're over at Neversink. They're so thrilled about the effect of having that noise and having that color that they lose a sense of what the danger is, that these are explosive devices. So I would be willing to work together, whoever else might be, because that's, part of the work that I do in prevention, is to be able to look at what are the best ways to be able to do the education. And I would hope out of the mayor's office that there could be a real concerted or look at who the spokespeople can be that the community will listen to. But we need to have a strategic plan in place, because they're already being set off. It's a matter of, it will continue as the weather gets warmer. More and more people are going to go outside with what they've purchased. Thank you.
All right. So Frank, if you by chance can get us a list of the legislators that you were speaking to, I'm going to talk to the mayor about talking to Manny and Mark and Judy about getting a voice in this thing. To everyone's point, it's not going to get fixed this year, but to the extent that we can impact the future, because all these issues are good points, but this thing's not going to go away until that law is repealed. a law that should have never been passed to begin with. I don't care if it's $60 million. It just doesn't make sense. It's all right, guys. So let's move on because we have a lot to cover here yet. The American Rescue Act and update, I just wanted to see if the administration is prepared to get, we're still waiting for the provisions of that funding, if I'm correct, Abe? I know
Yes, sir, that is correct.
You're doing some internal discussions, but at this point, nothing has been kind of formalized. And then your goal would come back to us and make some recommendations. Council, of course, will have input on those recommendations because we'll be approving the use of those funds as we always do. So I just want everyone to understand the administration at this point is just having an internal discussion, Abe, is that correct?
Yes, sir, that works, and community development and finance have already met, discussed some projects. 63.5 million. Question is, what kind of infrastructure projects can we use this money for? And we can invest in water, sewer, broadband infrastructure, but the real game changer, folks, as you know, is streets, sidewalks, parks. We could have some really good generational investments in the city that are going to last for quite some time. So we're waiting with bated breath. We had a briefing with Senator Bob Casey several weeks ago, where he said that the United States Department of Treasury may take weeks in order to sift through all those guidelines. It's not something we want to hear right now, and we understand that the money's going to be distributed in two parts. First half of the money is going to be coming to the city in May at some point, with the second tranche May 2022. So we're waiting very patiently for those guidelines to come from the United States Department of Treasury. We're waiting for Secretary Yellen to issue clarification on what the money can be used for, what it cannot be used for. And we've also been working with our Act 47 coordinator, PFM, Gordon Mann, who has told us that we have to be careful in terms of salaries. We can't really use the money for personnel that we are intending to keep past December 30th of 2024. So we do have some creativity. We will have some flexibility, but we're just waiting for those guidelines to come out. And once we have that in place, we will be able to provide you with a more comprehensive report as to what the money can be used for and what we are looking to do with it.
All right, Council, go ahead, Johanny.
How much, and is there a timeline or a deadline?
When you say deadline, you mean to seek interest in the funds, or? And first of all, let me back up. Apologize. It's 63.5 million, and the United States Department of Treasury is telling us to use that as an estimate. A lot of numbers, and I've seen 63.5, 63.8, but they're telling us to go with 63.5 for now. And then in terms of a deadline, again, the first half of that money is going to come to the municipality sometime in May. It's the first 60 days. And then the second half of that money will be coming to us no later than May of 2020.
Okay, so John.
Finish my question, I'm sorry. When will we get restrictions and or guidelines for how money can be utilized?
That's a great question, Councilor. We don't know that yet. The United States Department of Treasury has not issued those guidelines yet. That's what we're patiently waiting for. They have not given us any deadlines or any time frames.
Well, and that was the purpose of just having like kind of briefly listed on the agenda tonight, so everyone understood where the administration's at, where we're at collectively. Lucy?
Yep, thank you. I'm really happy to see this listed. I'm getting a lot of inquiries from the community at large, which tells me that everybody, wants to know. And unfortunately, we don't know, right? So just kind of keeping everybody feeling as if the information is coming, and when it does, it will come out. But I think what's important also is to know, like you just shared, the conversations that are happening. Whether there's, focus groups that are happening to discuss and talk about, when this comes, when the information is ready, we're ready. Because, as council members, I want to be best educated as to how to serve, my city and my district in those conversations when the funding is available, and respond to the way the administration presents the priorities of how to use, this aid. So I think, there's a lot of work there. The communication is going to be the key component. And, that's kind of my general response right now when people ask me is, we're waiting, to be presented by the administration in their areas of where the focus is going to be. Otherwise, how can we direct them, Abe? Who are you the point of contact?
Yes.
Is there anything else we should be saying? Because we want to make sure that this is inclusive, and it goes back to, how to build our city. This is part of that shared vision just as much as this downtown plus strategic plan is. So we all need to be working towards that same goal.
No question. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because the stakeholders are really important to the Moran administration. We want to hear from you. So by all means, direct any inquiries to the managing director's office. And that includes households, small businesses, nonprofits. We've already heard from several nonprofits, as a matter of fact. And we've had some internal discussions on facade programs, especially in the downtown area, that might qualify for these funds. We want to make the city more livable. We want to make the city more beautiful, but we also want to focus on strategic investments that are going to be generational. That's why at the top of this list, and we're really hoping we get the green light for this, are the streets, the sidewalks, parks, things that are going to have a long-lasting impact in our community.
All right, and I'm pretty sure this is going to be a give and take process along the way. It's going to take, but the administration isn't waiting for the money to come. They're doing some initial legwork with the understanding they're going to have to come to us and kind of get our input and see if we can get their support, et cetera. All right, guys. Anything else on that? It's good to thank you, Abe, for the update. We appreciate that. Gives everybody some insight. I thought those were some important issues this evening on the agenda for us to get updated on. So I'm glad we were able to take the time. We're going to do an agenda review. Going to try to do this quickly because we have to do an executive session as quick can be. All right, here we go. All right, so tonight we have commendation regarding National Library Week. Donna, are you reading that? Who's reading that?
I sort of thought Johanny should read it, because Johanny, you served on the library board, did you not?
Yes.
So you're the logical person to read that.
I mean, if everyone's okay with it, I'd be honored to read it. No
I
problem.
think that makes sense, really.
Okay, thank you. I'll just.
All right, and then Linda, we have one written speaker and one person signed up for live comment.
We have one with live comment, and we have 5 written submissions.
All right, who wants to read the written submissions? Anybody? Oh, a whole lot of volunteers here. So we're gonna have to just.
I think Marcia's on mute. You're on mute, Marcia.
Marcia, you want to read them? Lucine and Marcia can you send them to Lucine and Marcia?
I sent them
I
to
can
the
read them.
council.
They have something to do with near my district and also with Melissa's. But I can read them.
I'm happy to defer to Marcia and Melissa if they that makes
Are
sense.
you
to me.
aware, Melissa, of what we're speaking?
All right.
I don't know.
All right, well, we'll just go with you for now, Marcia. If
Okay.
Melissa wants to read some, that's fine.
I think I have them, but if you could just send them all to me in an email, Linda, then I'll have them all in one.
I already did. I
Okay,
sent
thank
them
you.
out around 3 o'clock.
My problem is they get buried with 100 other emails. That's the problem. So it's hard for me to locate them.
All
All
right,
right,
hang
while
on.
she's doing that, we're going to go through the consent agenda legislation. The first item is an award of contract for a 2021 Ford E50 AEV ambulance to Specklin Emergency Vehicles in Scottsdale, PA for $178,286. That's a regular box ambulance, I'm assuming, Chief?
Yes, sir. Yeah, it's part of our ongoing replacement plan there with them. It'll be replacing one that has a blown engine and is currently out of service.
What do we get, 3 years out of them at most, probably?
We try to get 8. That's the plan going forward. 4 frontline and 4 in reserve.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Any comments or questions on that? All right, if not, the next item is a resolution authorizing the disposition of records as set forth in Resolution 134-2009, adopted December 14th, 2009, in accordance with Act 428 of 1968, the retention and disposition schedule for records of Pennsylvania municipalities for all IT system server backup tapes from 2013 and earlier. I think that's pretty clear. Anybody have any questions or comments on that? Joe Honey?
I just want to make sure, and I know we've done this in the past, that these items that we're shredding or what have you, that they're accessible online, that we're storing them digitally if necessary.
I'm not sure where somebody can handle that question for this specific issue.
Yeah, Jamar is out this week, but let me try to answer that. I do believe that we will have access to those digitally, Counselor. So they're not completely gone, but I do believe that we'll have access to that file.
All right. Any other questions on that matter? All right, the next resolution is authorizing the disposition of records as set forth in Resolution 134-2009, adopted in 2009 in accordance with Act 428 of 1968. Retention and disposition schedule for records of Pennsylvania municipalities for 2013, and I'm assuming and earlier, accounts payable invoices. Any comments or questions on that? Sure, the same concerns exist. Again, if these things haven't been paid by now, probably not getting paid anyway, but it's good to know they're there. All right. Final resolution, authorize the execution and submission of a Pennsylvania DCED Keystone Communities Program Development Grant for the Reading Downtown 800 block of Penn Street South Courtyard Improvement Project. Any comments or questions about that? Is this the one the RRA received? Or no?
Jeff, we received some correspondence from Cindy Kastner regarding this earlier. I don't know if anybody from the administration wants to speak towards this, but they're really addressing the work that the task force has been doing over the past year and the issues that we've seen here with safety, loitering, littering, inappropriate use of public facilities. So this was presented to be able to receive the funding to make these enhancements to protect and preserve this public space in our community. I don't know if anybody else in the administration wants to speak to that, but that's really where the information that Cindy Kastner sent out earlier regarding this.
All right, any other comments, questions?
Just one addition, in addition to what the councilwoman shared, which is right on point, is maybe opening up some space there to have more downtown community events on the site there, because it has a plaza look to it. So we want to make best usage of that space. So we'll have a consultant come in. I mean, we do like the beautification, we do like the planners, but we want to see if we can rearrange things and get more use out of that space. So that's going to be part of the project, to see if we can get with the health center there, maybe we get some health fairs there. But right now we really can't do that in the current design. So we're going to take a look at the design to make it more, get more out of that space.
All right, any other comments or questions on that? So that's the end of the consent agenda legislation. We have a report this evening with Abe and the administration. Our auditor is with us for her report. And then we do have a brief report from Lester, the city arborist, regarding the Shade Tree Commission. Then we're going to go on to ordinances for final passage. And the first ordinance is Bill 21, vacating a portion of Liggett Avenue and removing it from the city's topographical map as requested by the petition presented by the Reading Housing Authority and recommended by the Reading Planning Commission and Public Works. Any comments on this? I think we went over this one pretty well. All right, we're okay. All right, the next ordinance for final Liggett Avenue intersection realignment and topographical map revision, introduced at the regular March 8th meeting. That was tied into the first one. Anybody have any comments on this? All right, if not, the next ordinance is Bill 27, amending the police chief's contract by adding the benefits excluding overtime granted under the current MOU between the city and the FOP, and any collective bargaining agreement that supersedes or amends the current agreement as he is entitled under the Pennsylvania Chiefs Act due to his extended service, as a police officer on June 1st, 2000, followed by his promotions to sergeant, lieutenant, and captain, working in multiple capacities for the city of Reading. Again, this was already discussed. This is something that the chief's already entitled to. Just requires our approval. Anybody have any comments on this specific issue? Joe Honey.
Yeah, just quickly, as I was reading the memorandum of agreement, so we provided increases to everyone in 2020 and 2021. And the wages to be increased is 4.5. Is that in addition to was already the salary that was already increased, or are we doing the difference?
I believe the way it's set up is this would be in addition to, I believe, a 2.5 at the beginning of the year. And I think the total salaries listed in the ordinance, but I haven't looked at it in 2 weeks.
Johanny, any other questions? Go ahead.
No, I just wanted clarity. That's all.
Okay, so I don't have that. Let me pull that up as well. So I think what Fred is saying, yes, it would be in addition to what he received in January.
Yeah, that was the 2020 collective bargaining agreement pay increase that I didn't receive last year.
You did not, Chief, you said?
That is correct.
Okay, so he didn't participate in the 2021.
Yeah, that's a good point. And it's retroactive. So it would be going back beyond 2020, toward the beginning of 2021.
All right, additional questions or comments? Go ahead, Johanny.
One last question. And also, will the same then be applicable to all of, to the entire police department? Because the MOA that was attached as an exhibit is very general. So I was just curious if we are anticipating some changes for the remainder of the department, retroactive as well.
The rest of the department already received that raise and retroactive pay.
Thank you, Chief.
Lucy?
Yeah, Fred, can you confirm that this ordinance in no way violates the bargaining agreement with the FOP, just so that we have that stated on record?
Yeah, not that I'm aware of, and we could certainly get a legal opinion on that before we go into it. I think our the person who's even more knowledgeable on that issue will be able to weigh in, and I'll just get clarification on that. But that's not my understanding is it will not.
Thank you.
All right, any other comments or questions on that specific ordinance? All right, the next ordinance is Bill 28, authorizing the acceptance of the MS4 pollution reduction plan for the city of Reading by adding 2 rain gardens in District 5 to benefit the Toppahawken Creek. Any comments? This is pretty clear. Yeah, Donna, go ahead.
I just want to thank the administration, especially Abe and Charlie, Tim. We've had a community meeting, a Zoom meeting on this. It was very productive. Frank, I can't remember if you were part of it, so I apologize if I'm excluding you there. But it was a good meeting. We particularly focused on the Warren Street Garden, which is the one closest to a full community, a full neighborhood. There's already an existing community garden there. It will be enhanced and enlarged. We'll be working together, hopefully working also with the school district and the students in Glenside Elementary. So while this is something that's more or less mandated, there's a lot of lemonade that's going to be made out of the lemon from this mandate. So it's a community supported. It's the right thing to do, and we're in a bizarre neighborhood that never had storm sewers installed when it was built. So all the water goes down towards a bypass, and this will be a collector situation, and it will just enhance the beauty of the area and the school site property along with the community garden enlarging that. So it's all for the good. And then down on Columbia Street, there's certainly another small one that runs along the roadside, and that will also beautify that area, which is adjacent to Stonecliff Park and the skateboard park. So it's all good, and we're appreciative of these efforts.
All right. If there's no other comments on that issue, we're going to move on then to Bill 29, authorizing the following: changing median width from 24 feet to 26 feet in the 100 block through the 400 blocks of Hancock Boulevard, and on the 800 block through 900 block of East Wyomissing Boulevard, reducing the cartway width to 23 feet, changing median width from 24 to 28 feet on the 1000 block through the 1300 blocks of East Wyomissing Boulevard, reducing the cartway width to 23 feet. Anybody have any comments on that specific ordinance? It's like a riddle, right? All right, so we're going to move on then to introduction of new ordinances. And again, we'll have an opportunity to discuss these again in 2 weeks. If there's any heavy questions now, we can certainly ask them. The first one is amending the 2021 position ordinance by reassigning 2 police officers from the Patrol Division to the Criminal Investigation Division, who will be assigned to the State Police Auto Task Force and fully funded by the Pennsylvania State Police Auto Theft Task Force. Any comments or questions on that? All right, Johanny, go ahead.
Yeah, I had asked if and I know I got the response, but I was just trying to understand. So if currently we have 168 police officers and 2 are being reassigned and being paid by the state, does that relieve 2 positions?
No, these positions were approved under the original Act 47 plan. They've been in place since 2004. So in 2004, we joined the State Police Auto Theft Task Force. They provided the funding since then for those 2 positions. There were 2 patrol officers that were transferred to the Criminal Investigations Division, and they were never officially transferred to the division in the position ordinance. So they're included in the 168. The fact that they're funded through the Pennsylvania State Police was included in that 168 count.
So this is just kind of updating the position ordinance, getting it
Yes,
correct.
yeah, it's just correcting where the positions actually are located in the police department within the position ordinance.
So there's no additional funding per se. It's already being accounted for?
Right.
Yeah, that's correct. It's been accounted for since 2004.
Okay, Lucine, did you have a quick question?
Yep, doesn't have to be answered now, but I just want to be reassured that even though this was done in 2004, that we're compliant with the exit strategy for Act 47, so that there's no questioning about the positions that are there and the movement that we're ratifying now, which is how I'm understanding this.
Sounds like it actually puts us in more compliance with the Act 47 plan, right, Chief? I mean, again, this has already been in place. It's just need to be cleaned up in a position ordinance. Go ahead, Johanny.
And again, do we anticipate additional changes or reclassifications and so on and so forth as we're cleaning things up?
These are the only 2 positions that I found that weren't in the correct division in the position ordinance. The only change might be is if the state police decides they want to add another position and fund another position, and then we would go to PFM to discuss if we could increase the number of our personnel to 169 if we get an additional position funded. But that would be the only change.
All right, thank you, Chief. We're going to move on to the next ordinance for introduction, amending the City Code Chapter 77, Part 1, Police Department by amending the experience requirements for the position of captain and striking Section 110 college credits for sergeant, lieutenant, and captain, reserving that section. Chief, did you want to speak to that ordinance?
Sure. There's 2 parts to this. The first is changing the requirements for promotion to the position of captain. What we're looking for is to change those requirements in order to improve the quality of candidates that are eligible for promotion. Currently, a sergeant can be promoted to the position of captain, and we feel that by skipping the rank of lieutenant, they're missing out on valuable skills and experience especially where the police department operates, that are required to function at the level of a captain. We're also requiring that they have 2 years of supervisory experience in the patrol division, and that's to ensure that they have an understanding of how the largest division in our department that has the most interaction with the public enacts our crime reduction and community outreach strategy. So we're just making sure that our candidates for the position of captain are well-rounded, well-trained, and well-experienced within the police department. The second part of that, the removal of the college points, we did a lot of research into this. We looked at a lot of information that has recently been come out from the International Chiefs of Police Association, and also best practices with police departments throughout the Commonwealth. And what we discovered really is that our current practice of awarding college points through our promotional process is potentially discriminatory to certain individuals. It's been our goal to recruit and promote the best candidates possible, while also attempting to create a department that better reflects the community that we serve. So we looked at things like statistics from the U.S. Census Bureau that indicates that 67% of city residents identify as Hispanic or Latino, which is a segment of our population that we should be actively recruiting and also professionally developing to lead the department in the future. We want folks who know and understand the city, its culture, and what it needs from its police department to maintain public safety in a manner that's respectful to our residents. So, the one thing we have to keep in mind too, as we look at this, is that we are all living and working in a city that has a poverty rate of over 35%, which to me lends to the understanding that some folks in our city don't have the financial means to achieve a higher education. When you look at, again, statistics in 2019 from the U.S. Census Bureau indicates that while 40.1% of non-Hispanic whites aged 25 or over have a bachelor's degree, only 18.8% of Hispanics do. So I'm not correlating any race or ethnicity with the poverty level in the city of Reading, but if you just do a quick statistical analysis of the environment that we are recruiting from and the folks that we want to represent our police department, you could see that it's potentially discriminatory in the fact that those folks who we're trying to recruit, that we're trying to advance throughout our police department to lead the department in the future, may not have the financial means to obtain a higher education. And the city currently has no policy in place in order to financially provide them with the incentive to do that. And then finally, we looked at other police organizations, third-class cities in the Commonwealth, the state police, cities of York, Harrisburg, Allentown, and Lancaster. They don't award college points during the promotional process. What we're looking for is individuals who understand the way the police department operates, our policies, our procedures, and how they relate to the city of Reading itself. We're looking for folks who test well and interview well, and who are going to understand policing at our local level, and not just simply promote folks who had the financial means to obtain a higher education. Because when we look at our promotional tests, the Baral scores, the base scores, especially as you get higher up through the ranks, are very close, very competitive. And then individuals who don't have the financial means to get a higher education are getting jumped by those who do. I don't for a second doubt that those with a higher education bring something else to the table, but I also think that we need to keep an even playing field and provide equal opportunity for all of our employees to advance in the department, notwithstanding any kind of background that they come from.
Okay, Marcia. Thank you, Chief. Marcia?
Yeah, and I would like to have an opportunity to delve into this a little deeper, because I understand the rationale, but I also think it's really important looking at how closely we work with our institutions of higher education, how they do make opportunities to be able to provide education through their criminal justice systems, through scholarships and such, that we really need to look at. Let's not make an assumption that people aren't going to have opportunities for higher education. Indeed, Alverna University, one of our strongest partners now, has a criminal justice track. And so let's have a further discussion, maybe at the next committee of the whole.
Johanny?
Yeah, I completely agree. I'm a firm believer that we want the cream of the crop. We want to raise the bar. We want to improve quality of candidates. And I would be interested in seeing data that speaks of police performance, the difference between someone with college education versus the one that doesn't. I'd like to see data that speaks on that performance. I also think we have an opportunity to create some type of incentive-based recruitment, that we work with our colleges and universities where we can either do loan forgiveness programs for college graduates that want to join the police force, provided that they commit, I don't know, 5 years or 6 years to the force. Like, we need to figure out, how do we incentivize our young adults, our maybe college students who are pursuing criminal justice, so that we can recruit them either straight from high school as they're enrolling into college, or straight from college to join our force, and figure out how we, you know, cover some of those learning expenses, right? Because we want to continue to better our employees and provide them with the tools to continue to work on being the best that they can be.
Okay, I'm going to encourage everyone to do some research between now and 2 weeks and see if there's more questions, that you can get them off to Abe and the chief relevant to this. It's a, you know, you could argue one way or the other. It's great to provide education to some people, but I certainly, in a position of a police officer, the best way to get ahead is to have actual experience, and some with degrees don't do as well as others without. And I think there's that old common sense approach that comes into play with policing. So I can see the value both ways here. I'm not trying to. So Chief, thank you for the update. We will take that into motion 2 weeks from now, unless time is requested for a little further discussion.
You're welcome. And if there are other suggestions on how we can improve that process, or potentially recruit better or advance individuals through our process better, or any other incentive programs, whatever suggestions the council may have, we're open to hear them and incorporate them into this idea.
Great, thank you. All right, our next ordinance is going to be authorizing the agreement of sale for 313A South 8th Street for $600 after followed its purchasing policy by notifying the surrounding neighbors of the property that the property was available for bid. Any comments or questions on that? All right, the next ordinance is authorizing agreement of sale for 423 Schuylkill Avenue and to the Reading Parking Authority for $25,000. Questions or comments on that? That's been a long-standing. Is that the one, Donna, there? Yeah, that's the one that's been around forever. Okay, go ahead, Donna.
I'm just glad to see it's finally coming to us. I hope we can agree to this sale. I hope we can support it. When I was on a parking authority 12 years ago, I was hoping this would happen. So yes, good things take time, but I think it's really good for that neighborhood to have that available parking. And I think it's great for the parking authority moving forward to consider this kind of ancillary parking in highly dense residential areas. So I couldn't be more pleased with this. So thank you.
Yeah, go ahead, Lucy.
Sorry to backtrack. I think this might be a question for Fred. For Ordinance C, this property that we're discussing, is this city owned, or who is this property owned by?
We're talking about, and I apologize, I was on the phone with one of our attorneys. Are we talking about 423 Schuylkill? Yeah, that's owned by
South.
Yeah,
No, 313.
Yeah, that's owned by the city. Both 313 South 8th Street and 423 Schuylkill Avenue are owned by the city.
Okay, thanks for confirming, because I know there's some things coming down the pike, and what's really interesting to me is how we present this publicly in the opportunities of whether, you know, it's city-owned property to be purchased by an authority, by a citizen, you know, what this process looks like. So I'm happy to see this on the agenda.
Yeah, and we're working through that. We're excited to have the redevelopment authority back to where it was and maybe better. And I've spoke to Jamal last week and Abe, and we're looking to collaborate with their solicitor to get a good process up and running.
All right, great, thank you. Then the final ordinance for introduction is authorizing appropriation transfer of donations from the Ampy Trust, currently in fund balance, into an agency fund account for active use. That was to be distributed today. Who wants to speak to that specific ordinance?
Jamar asked that be withdrawn until he returns from his time off.
Okay, so Marcia, do me a favor, do not read that onto the record. All right, then we're going to go into resolutions. The first one is reappointing Joe Ampy to the Ethics Board, and the second one is appointing John Zabala as a liaison to the Youth Commission. Any comments or questions on both of those? All right, if not, that's good. That's our agenda. Does anybody have anything else for public discussion this evening before we go into a brief executive session? If not, I need Linda to clear out the room and stop the streaming so we can go into a brief executive session. I'm thinking we should be able to make it to our regular meeting by 7:05, hopefully. Depends on how little I talk.